Over time, throughout my mentally incarcerated detainment period, in my youth years being secluded down in the basement playing games to relieve overwhelming stress off of myself, I've begun to realize how naive I was for growing easily attached to the only games I owned. I can only bring the conclusion to mind that, admittingly, I knew nothing about the general aspect of video games from the start, since I really didn't have any access, or the responsibility for all that matter, to internet privileges. And because of that, even to this day, my passion for the underrated still exists within me. However, if I had to begin with the procedure of extracting one of those games out of the railing system for underrated, would contribute in full specified factors that Metroid Other M is less divisive enough to classify as an underrated game. If anything, this is a definitive example of an absolute train wreck to a majority of people who experience its background. Mainly because it ruined the main aspect and aesthetic of the Metroid formula in substantial effects that it doesn't go on par with the rest of the series in any way that's seen, aside from its place on the timeline. Along with a couple other fancy ideas that was somehow considered as a genius fundamental concept brought on the discussion tables. The most painfully obvious one being how annoyingly repetitive Samus is during the intro while she's thinking without any vocabulary alternatives whatsoever, which is most likely due to bad localization. The point to move on mechanic is haphazardly notorious and overall fucking asinine. The plot is basically polished off of Samus's armor and developed entirely by the Galactic Federation for irrational purposes that couldn't be any more absurd, especially the plot twist at the end. Like, how is this even close to being called a brilliant idea by a functioning human brain? The FPS mechanic is borderline atrocious and literally impossible to optimize in combat. Standing in place while firing your arm cannon? What's the worst that can happen? Everything, now that Samus instantly becomes unreliable and acts like a fucking statue each time with every vertical rotation on the Wii remote. How could you take out the primary standard aspect of the entire FPS universe that made Metroid's gameplay more enjoyable since it was introduced, only to be objectively worse in every goddamn way imaginable, and that you somehow seem to ignore what it's supposed to be? There is no excuse for a moral sin like that. I'd say go back, but it's far too late to change what's already been made. That's also not to mention the excruciatingly tedious and downright obnoxious fact of having the point A to point B objectives replaced entirely with save stations that's actually required to unlock the door by saving the game multiple times. Why would you do this? That's the summary of Other M. Iffy voice acting, missionary objectives are now pointless to achieve and painfully linear, therefore making it far worse than Fusion. The story is terrible, and the first-person view had its life essence sucked into an insufferable paradox. But this is all being spoken from a minority side of things and rational negativity bias that I'm certain everyone else can agree with. I don't mean to sound too subjective about this, but logically speaking, the rest of Metroid Other M is, for the most part, pretty damn impressive. I mean, even though the story of the game is genuinely horrible, the idea of seeing Samus actually having a personality into her character for once is what gets me the most about Other M for what it is and how it plays out through Samus's vision. All the while as turmoil, suspense, and insidious tension is all that exists in the atmosphere of the game. It's a game meant to keep you on edge, and above all, make you completely aware of your surroundings at all times. The music in particular is quite the exceptionally unique prospect for opening the grand display of action immediately after following the events of the atmosphere. In addition to being entirely comprised in a symphonic orchestra composition is nothing short but surprising. To add on more about what Other M does good with, is the fact that it knows how to define unpredictable with effective results. That goes without saying. The live cinematic action cutscenes made to keep those ideas more interesting and goes along perfectly with the setting depending on the situation that occurs. Specifically, right when a boss fight is about to pursue with hardly any notice that's given in even the slightest degree. And these types of bosses can either be a massive hit or extremely lackluster in battle that fails to deliver proper authentic expectations. To be fair, if there is one thing to enjoy about Other M, it would undoubtedly have to contribute to its gameplay. More specifically, in fact, the instant dodging abilities and the lethal strike mechanic. It's just the whole idea of Samus acting like a total fucking badass by witnessing her swift mobility that's built in incredible proportions to have the capability to avoid all sorts of attacks sent out relentlessly and combining it with the lethal strike mechanic featuring an automatic transition leading straight into a cinematic animation of her mercilessly striking down on an enemy to go in for the kill is what makes it so unbelievably satisfying to watch each time when an opportunity like that is given. In all seriousness, this gameplay mechanic alone is what kept me invested the most all throughout the game. At any rate, this particular contender as a Metroid boss is still awaiting to have its accolade placed endearingly atop its pedestal with pride. And that worthy selection is going toward a much bigger prize about to accept the honor in rectified qualities. Sometime later, after enduring through numerous Force Obedience authorities, don't get me started, your arsenal will finally be fully authorized and able to use power bombs wherever and however necessary for the rest of the game until your heart's content. On an important note, these spherically shaped barrier structures placed around certain areas can now be opened and accessed to obtain its hidden contents and secretly hidden / alternate routes to navigate anywhere on the bottle ship. After avoiding every possible outcome of getting pulverized to oblivion and dying like a bitch by a rage quit inducing insect warrior first, I hate this! One of them which contains the final area in the main sector reaching toward the end of the postgame. After terminating the Dysprochian initiating lockdown in the small hallway, proceed through the door and you will enter inside a gigantic arc-shaped path leading directly to your destination. All the while as packs of mini-bosses and Zabezian enemies spawn mysteriously out of portals to attack you. Though since you're permanently equipped with your strongest latent abilities acquired thus far in the game, they're of little to no threat whatsoever to take care of. So screw you, screw you, screw you, and screw you! A short yet satisfying intervention indeed, now that there's absolutely nothing to stand in your way any longer, now that every such attempt of death has been thrown into the pile of their deceased bioweapon relatives. But I require more sustenance, because my feelings for satisfaction are insignificant. So what if we took in Metroid Other M's dodging mechanic and have it fully implemented and optimized entirely for the fucking concept as the final boss? By the holy words of a Cole's Testament, don't even fucking bother asking if I am completely satisfied! I couldn't be anything more than that now that this ethereal gameplay mechanic has been maxed out in full potential to deliver the most godlike final boss in Metroid I have ever fought in my entire damn life! And not much additional explanations need to be said on why, other than the fact that you're already looking at it. But what exactly is causing all this perfection to be manifested onto the now destroyed control bridge? Well, as as it turns out, this cryptic, unnatural-sized cephalopod of pure excellence is the same major enemy haunting the wrecked ship in Super Metroid. Except in Other M, Phantoon's placement as a secret true final boss is without any indication of why it is. And by that, it remains completely undetermined and obscure enough to have no logical explanation for what its placement in Other M means. It's just there. But should anyone really care as to why? If anything, I'd condone concepts in and of itself to do the talking. Phantoon, I authorize you to proceed with what you are doing. I feel like I need to file out a couple extra clarifications and explain more rationally for what makes this dodging mechanic by itself, aka Phantoon, stand out a whole lot more than the last entry. I may sound too subjectively biased from this, but regardless, the fact of having the most badass mechanic sharpened at maximum efficiency to use against the final boss feels so goddamn empowering to be invested in. More than literally anything else that the bosses in this game had to offer. And while it does reuse the same battle music from the Queen Metroid, honestly, who gives a shit about that one? The sheer intensity giving off in a scenario like this is a hell of a lot more effective, since the fight literally starts itself in a breakout sequence until the area from where you're fighting drowns in space and tears it wide open to unleash an everlasting onslaught of chaos, spawning in literally every corner around the room. This fight acts like an endless bloom of disaster that reproduces exponentially to the point where it oversaturates the vicinity with Phantoon's attacks. It's an overwhelming storm that's constantly breeding in an endless cycle and never shows any sign of slowing down. As soon as this gargantuan, alienated, outer dimensional cephalopod enigma opens its jaw-like eyelid, the glass window securing the front of the control bridge takes a violent impact until it shatters off completely by force, which increases the diameter of Phantoon's attacks to surround the air, now entirely exposed in space. A whole plethora of turbulent destruction, raging from Phantoon's tentacles striking across the room if approached too close. Classic eerie blue eyeballs covered in a fiery aura that homes in directly toward you in swarms of bullet hell. Severed hand Cyclops enemies that will try to capture and slam you onto the ground while distracting your aim at Phantoon's eye. Dark swirling vortexes summon on the surface that burst into a pillar of agony after a certain amount of time passes, all of which can and will occur all at once. But despite literally everything that's happening in this fight, none of it, I repeat, none of it even matters to be considered a major threat to you. At no point, what? At no point are you, I can't. At no point are you ever close to receiving a hit from this endless cycle of mayhem because of how effortless it actually is to avoid everything. It's all being taken complete care of by the dodging mechanic itself. All that it takes to perform a single dodge. God, what the fuck? I love this too much. All that it takes to perform a single dodge is the slightest input of the direction you press. You can lightly tap to wherever you want to go, and Samus will do the rest. Furthermore, no practice is needed at all. You can legitimately input a dodge into another one repeatedly until the attack is finished. But since the attacks sent out from Phantoon are always spawning left and right across the room, the dodging mechanic is made eternal. The main thing that I fucking love the most about this fight is the fact of seeing Phantoon going all out on the assault so overwhelmingly to demand your death, but its relentless retaliation is ultimately proven 100% ineffective. I'm in tears right now, holy shit. Is ultimately proven 100% ineffective, all the while as Samus is inevitably prevailing by making things look so goddamn easy. And I can never get enough of it. It's just so thrilling and unbelievably satisfying for a Metroid boss experience. It's easy, it's stupid, but oh my god, does it work! But hang on a second. I just thought of something. If it is indeed true that Phantoon is not only part of a spectral creature existing from another dimension, but also said to be the physical manifestation of Mother Brain's consciousness, then does that mean its appearance isn't too vague after all? Is the clone of the real Mother Brain, that's not an android, still alive somewhere even after Sector 0 was destroyed? Is this only part of the fight against what it could have been with the clone of Mother Brain? Is this what it was supposed to be? Ending anticlimactically, but not yet finished? I guess this comes to the obvious conclusion that Mother Brain isn't the only thing that remains mysterious. And I'm afraid that even a remake wouldn't be able to do justice for it. Oh well, as long as it keeps the epic dodging maneuvers, that's all that matters to me. Because this fight took my breath away. Sometimes, there are those moments when life gives us the worst option that could ever be selected. And now it looks like I don't have any other choice but to move on. But in a situation like this, of where hope, faith, and courage are never present, just makes it so insufferable to follow the path of acceptance. It's so hard for me to even begin with this, and why it's ranked this incredibly high, like it was made to be an unoriginal and fucking obvious choice as an overall favorite, like how everyone else views it as something admiring solely because of Rundus and him alone, without any representation of what carries out in the fight. That is only a mere fraction of what this fight truly means. But the rest of those reasons I have to say about it is justified, and more on a spiritual level of countless experiences I have been holding on to for over a decade. Each playthrough I have gone over time and time again, from this moment of having to fight Rundus to the death, has inevitably made the steering wheel pull me into another direction that felt the most painful I have ever taken by force. Because to me, Rundus is not just one of those characters that looks, acts, and sounds awesome. He is also one that I've always come to admire as a privilege for what his role in the game is meant to be received as. His bold and daring demeanor for attaining his personally assigned bounties to take in and admire for self-achievement, combined with his flaunting personality, may look to be something to scoff at for how overconfident he really acts as a character that always manages to steal the spotlight numerous times. Especially for his short-lasting glorified tune, emphasizing it like it's made to feel humbly admired to. But the reasons for all of this being like that to begin with can simply be put into words of him arriving to the rescue. Likewise, a hero that deeply admires and gives respect for who you are and knows what you're truly made of. It was such an amazing inspiration to acquire feelings of motivation just by witnessing Rundus's character for everything he does and what he was best known for during the invasion on planet Norian. It's feelings like these that gives out a delicate flow of believing that things surely will turn for the better thanks to his noble will and high moral standards as a character that respects Samus as a worthy ally, combining efforts to achieve victory, and justice will prevail in the end. To actually think that those words would be his last. After awakening from a comatose state, power invigorates through the veins now that the blast received from Dark Samus made you acquire internal Phazon enhancements, learning the hyper mode ability and utilizing your energy to be amplified at deadly proportions to unleash what's constantly being generated straight at the enemy. Insurmountable ambitions flow through inside, opening up a brand new mission to seek the downfall of Phazon corruption from ever attaining its heartless goal, led by slaves fallen to its malicious nature, and therefore forced to follow by what commands it, until the scheme is brought into fruition, which will soon engrave the same fate for Samus, as she enters hyper mode in the midst of investigating Planet Brio by opening fire at a Phazon vine structure blocking the way forward, and her body suddenly starts to overreact with Phazon multiplying rapidly until it ultimately manages to take over and thus follow evil's corruptive desires, and the journey instantly comes to an end. It's a mission of harsh endurance, now that Phazon corruption looms about in every area you breathe in. The Phazon Enhancement Device, a suit that was once used for an increase of maximum firepower, now officially being worn as your own living death sentence. As a result of current status transmissions unable to be received from Federation HQ, adds up to the unfortunate conclusion that all hired bounty hunters have fallen to Phazon corruption after experiencing the exact same thing that almost happened to you, but couldn't defeat. And once you reach them, they speak to you in an unnatural way that already clarifies their own characteristic figure as one that's been forsaken, ravaging their inner mind and body, now left without a soul to keep, destroyed by the act of corruption. But on the case with Rundus, silence is all that remains through him. First seen in secret as an Easter egg perched on top of a monument decoration, standing near the entrance toward the GFS Theseus, watching over in the distance, and goes away after catching a glimpse of his presence. It's a hidden discovery placed so ambiguously that it feels like that his corrupted mind is following the order of preparing to change course and await your arrival in the fiery air dock. Eventually, once you do, he is seen standing high above an elevated room, staring down at you, while his deep choir tune plays out for his very appearance, but is cut short when he suddenly turns away and leaves without saying a word, made to bring out confusion that can't foretell what he's officially become, and so those feelings of wanting to find out the truth tempted by your highest degree of morals. Likewise, it's made for you to believe that Rundus is still there, and going after him would solve everything. Upon entering inside the Temple of Brio, an armada of space pirates intervenes above the vicinity and dispatches their numbers to attack you. When all of them are destroyed, Samus is seen still engaged with what's left, until a giant structure of ice suddenly spawns in the center and expels multiple trails of ice chasing after the space pirates and opposes them on contact. Spoken in glory from the familiar vocalized tune when Rundus, once again comes in to aid for assistance, just like before. Relief, now that his actions are viewed as normal. But when you decide to take a step closer, Rundus suddenly retaliates against you in an alarm of surprising actions to clearly explain the idea of what's going on, and follows with a message as the worst possible answer to ever think of. This can't be real. It's not possible. Sadly, it is. I myself couldn't feel any more shattered after everything that Rundus has done to save Samus's life twice over, and all the while respects her for who she is, comes down to the most unthinkable and catastrophic conclusion that this is how you repay him. And it's even more painful for me to say that this is a fight that occurs way too early in the game. An obligation to bring the Phazon massacre to an end starts off with killing the character who is the most important of them all. Rundus, a living symbol of justice, a character that has become a hero to the player, but above all, he is an irreplaceable friend that has now vanished as a result of the vile, destructive, mutagenic, and cancerous element, Phazon, by holding its unbearable will to destroy all life, and therefore forcing you to put an end to another one. This is not a fight. It's a fucking dilemma. It's cruel enough to perceivably justify over how much conflicting torture and emotion plays out during this insufferable ordeal. Because theoretically, I can give out plenty of reasons over what this fight truly speaks out to me in compounding factors according to my eyes. Since Rundus is the only character that remains silent throughout his corrupted status, in addition to mysteriously laying siege against the space pirates before the encounter commences, despite being called one of their commanders, the silhouette of Dark Samus transitioning inside Rundus's body, along with PED modification equipment not showing any sign of Phazon flowing through himself, can correlate in complete, full summary that he is, in fact, not corrupted. No, it's much worse than that. Instead, he's being possessed personally by Dark Samus itself, using him as a puppet against Samus, like it knows how important he is to her as a close friend, heartlessly mocking her by abolishing all known traces of hope, and leaves the situation running with only one option left to choose from: putting an end to Rundus's misery. Furthermore, during this heartbreaking dilemma, the only thing that he constantly does is present tragic, meaningful gesticulations that clearly indicates him so desperate enough to avoid fighting altogether, as do you, which is expressed in a detailed manner as he's constantly running away and attacks with multiple bursts of freezing cold air that's sent out as a way of saying, "Stay away from me," or "I don't want to hurt you." And on certain occasions, he'll let out these genuinely painful screeching noises meant to portray that he's suffering. It honestly almost sounds like that those are the noises emitted from the real Rundus, who is now mentally trapped inside and forcefully being held back by Dark Samus from ever allowing him to fight or subdue against its dreaded dominion. In other words, the mind and soul is Rundus, incarcerated from within and unable to scream, but the body is Dark Samus, controlling his every action, and therefore making him suffer while the situation lies helplessly in limbo and drowns in the darkest emotion imaginable, for it to end in unrelenting sorrow. Like this is all in spite for Dark Samus's intention to make fun of the protagonist. Just like the heartless creature it was literally born to be. To add on more about this though, during this fight, Rundus is not only capable of generating and manipulating the ice element at will, but he also wields something different that rectifies accordingly with what I've been mentioning about Dark Samus possessing Rundus's body. If at any point when you receive a direct hit from Rundus's close range ice saber attack, this will happen. My experience hearing this very noise expelling out with such sinister and menacing quality felt so agonizing to me that it tore me apart from how much I strongly believed that this malicious, haunting, and pure evil, corrupted laughter did not sound anything like Rundus at all. It's just not. This is literally the sound of complete, total, insulting mockery from the enemy that's toying around inside, who you're forced to kill. And getting hit by this simple attack alone honestly does a whole lot more than follow the linear-based standard rule of being an attack programmed to damage you. Because for me personally, it hurt so much for the sole reason when I discovered this attack by accident and being completely unaware to hear what comes out immediately after. It's nothing but a straight up insult delivered by Dark Samus in such a feral tone that it creates something more important to add inside the horrible void of endless emotional torture. I may be over-exaggerating with all this, but I still can't get over the amount of affliction this attack personally does to me. It's a heartlessly cruel way of Dark Samus making fun of you, playing with your emotions, and enjoy seeing you suffer from what it's doing, and that there's nothing you can do about it. This fight is filled with so much insufferable conflicted pain and emotion that I cannot believe of how far it was actually taken to make the player feel sad and remorseful. They literally did everything they could to create a character that was specifically intended to receive so much recognition as a highly inspirational sign of motivation to show what you're truly made of, to be admired as a hero, and even giving them the desire of wanting to become like him because of what he does to achieve all of which he's familiarized with. All of this, after experiencing what he was best known for, turns into a living nightmare. A painfully arising conflict about yourself, being forced to kill who you admire as a friend that's done so much for you. And this is the only thing you have to give them in return. There is no other way to allow the odds of morals to be in your favor. It's a dilemma that tightens the shackles around what can't be condoned, but only to make it suffer and endure a cold, harsh reality to be taken by force. Rundus is a fight that goes in depth to quintessentially define every living, natural characteristic of how it feels to endure the act of putting an end to someone who is endlessly suffering, and therefore having no possible solution to cure or heal them for survival, believing that that person is so important to them for what they mean as someone to admire by receiving their unending love or respect, and that they had so much to live for but never acquired the chance to fulfill. Because in Rundus's case, he is the third boss fight that's encountered in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. His role started off strong and noble, but when you reach him in Brio, that is the time where it officially comes to an end, along with every chance to develop his character. Wasted. It is a fight that gives new meaning to painfully easy, just by the mere fucking presence of his health bar rapidly depleting. And because of that aspect, it's specifically designed to either make him suffer a slow and painful death, or with hyper mode, a quick and painless one. And it ends all the same, regardless of what exploit is chosen. Sorrow and misery. More importantly, above everything else, however, is the music that plays and follows during this torturous dilemma. Yeah, as if that was something I'd possibly forget to mention. It is a phenomenal arrangement that acts like a tidal wave built with power and epicness, rising at its peak for the glory of Rundus' heroic image, but lasts for only a couple of seconds until that wave of power and epicness regresses into nothing, and thus entirely replaced by a tsunami raging rapidly towards the shore, all the while continuously building with energy until the wave of heroic destruction finally arrives. It violently crashes down with tremendous strength and ultimately causes everything to drown in emotion. All that have taken the devastating impact are now brought with sadness, pain, suffering, sorrow, despair, pleading for help, begging for mercy, and therefore left unable to move on. It increases those immensely powerful levels of emotion until everything is slaughtered and mercilessly ravaged by an evil presence summoning forth to manipulate the scene, so sudden and abrupt that a screech of agony can be heard repeatedly, as if something is invading a person's mind and desperately trying to fight back against its attacker. But it eventually succeeds. I have never heard anything so emotionally powerful like this before in my entire life. Rundus Battle is a soundtrack that I have since kept close to myself for a long time because of how much this fight means to me, as well as nailing everything on the coddamn mark for defining the scene between the protagonist and their hero dueling against each other in the most painfully emotional and conflicting scenario where everything remains hopeless and grows more worse at every turn. Left with no other choice but to pull the trigger on the one who was no longer the same person they once knew, ending their suffering and forced to put an end to their misery. It will always stay true to me as my overall favorite soundtrack because of how much insurmountable power it wields to define and achieve all of this on a spiritual level. And no other soundtrack in the entire library of video games will ever manage to replace with what this truly represents in deep meaning behind both the idea of Rundus as a character and the dreaded experience that carries out in maximum rectified and ethereal proportions during the fight. Because to clarify, I don't like this fight at all. But at the same time, I've always come to admire it as a memorable Metroid experience that gets to me for what it means to move on, regardless if I utterly refuse to accept. It's a hard thing to endure in life, but in the end, you'll succeed without them. That's what this fight really means to me, and it's perfect. As much as it seems that I am forever indebted to everything about Rundus, it's still not enough to give out an excellent Metroid boss experience. So let's invite the excitement back one last time. My scans have detected a presence so foreboding and enigmatic that it invokes a familiarity program beckoning across the darkest of quintessence, draining life without end. Even whilst I navigate through and about the desolated prodigy of ancient ruins etched with avian intellect and their tragic history, the dead, quiet ambience gives me a sign most unsettling. That it's as if the gift of self-awareness I've been entrusted is envisioning a foreshadowing event. The noises. They continue to echo within the lifeless atmosphere, spreading like a virus, adapting, controlling, speaking. It feels so digital, mysterious, advanced. And after initiating multiple dimensional atomic travel sequences, the answer is now clear. Since the beginning of the Prime legacy, it was none other than the work of the Sanctuary Sentinel. Was this a coincidence? No. It's destiny. The noises have beckoned to follow where it's leading me. It was all but a trick, and I fell for its trap. But my actions were deliberate. I acknowledge myself to submit upon the mastermind's authority. At this very moment, after 9 entries, I have finally reached the jackpot. A lot of you may have already seen this one coming, but I can't help but give my highest honor to everyone in the community that understands what Quadraxis is widely known for as one of the greatest boss fights in all of gaming. And agreeing to this statement could not feel any more correct, as one that subjectively represents it as factual. No fucking question. Quadraxis is built with all the needed specifications to obtain that golden standard. More than enough to where no other boss in the entire series can manage to withstand against its subliminal design. And by design, I literally mean the entire fucking blueprint that was forged from Retro Studios' inspirationally amazing sense of creativity. In the outset of Origin, Quadraxis was modeled and created by the Luminoth as their main line of defensive security measures to utilize for protection against their ordeal cast by the Ing. The untold amount of damage caused by the war on planet Aether were so devastating that the chances for victory plummeted almost entirely down to impossible. And so it became most ideal for them to enable highly advanced technological prowess built into Quadraxis' combat systems, fully optimized in order to guard their planetary energy for stabilization in Sanctuary Fortress, and eliminate any hostile intruders for what they dare to seek. However, this decision unfortunately took a dramatically horrific turn for the worst possible outcome that the Luminoth could ever bear to witness. Since during that time, the Ing's intelligence for possessing biology suddenly began to evolve as the aim toward technology-based life forms as the next stage following their dreaded lifeless scheme for an indominant civilized massacre, and ultimately after the entire universe, therefore increasing their numbers to tremendous heights even further way beyond reckoning. Learning this substantial increase of light-consuming wisdom, the Ing retaliated at full force, turning the tides with every weapon programmed to exterminate them now swear allegiance to the side without a mind of peace or a heart of mercy. Life was dying, hope grew dim, survival was critical, and light was destroyed. Once the Ing finally reached to the temple, with the help of possessive capabilities honed at maximum intervals, the large security drone was lost of its original core processing systems, taken to dark aether, and thus Quadraxis was remodified and became a quintessential state-of-the-art guardian that now serves supreme loyalty and order by the tribe of darkness that commands it inside Holy Fortress's afterimage, which they come to call in their world the Hive. And with little to no effort, Sanctuary Fortress has fallen to the enemy. And once you enter inside the ominous realm of a ravenous, bloodthirsty dimension where darkness breeds, the Ing Hive is coated in a sentient biomass of corruptively deformed technological realterization, leaking with swarms of grubs, workers, carpenters, and drones pulsating from within the abyss of eternal evil and constricts inside the corridors. 3 crimson gems hold the emanated energy essence required to unlock the trial's gateway, leading to take back what's being heavily guarded. Once all 3 keys are obtained, the trial gate will open and a separate doorway will unfold to allow essential preparation. On the other side, witnessed from high above, lies the Luminoth's greatest creation, but not any longer. Now officially known as the Ing's secret weapon, placed inside the Ing Hive temple outskirts, where it rests motionless, system set offline and remains inactive. While descending or jumping off the lift platform, you can really feel and understand how damn powerful Quadraxis is as a living gigantic sign of warning just by looking at it. And yet, it's there, right in front of your vision. Threat scans will not be detected until you approach further and gaze directly right in front of it. The size of Quadraxis alone is so dreadfully imposing that it gives those intense feelings that it could reactivate at any given moment when times are least expected. An eventfully foreboding scene of imagination that is starting to begin. An enormous liquefied puddle of formed Ing possession suddenly appears everywhere beneath Quadraxis, slowly crawling around every part of its body before finally sinking in all at once, and thus restores power to its circuits, processing at maximum efficiency, regaining stabilization, combat systems engaged, locked and loaded. The fight with the titanic colossal rogue security unit has now commenced in full luxury. And oh my god, the setting of Quadraxis' entirety is so unbelievably intense. Size is definitely one factor of brilliant importance to jot down, quite possibly the largest in the entire series to date. But realistically speaking, the whole goddamn scenario taking effect for a gigantic robot guardian reprogrammed into a machine of war, wielding the premise of being deadlocked onto your sights at all times without breaking the slightest contact off of you, feels like as if it's analyzing your abilities to search for a weakness and acts like it knows what you're going to do. But this fucking display of pure malicious intimidation shoots through the fabric of reality by the fact of there being absolutely no safe zones present to rely on protection, meaning you are left completely exposed to Dark Aether's toxic atmosphere. Whether if you get hit or not, your life essence is insidiously being erased. These borderline intimidating specifications especially goes double with the music that occurs. I absolutely love Quadraxis' theme. Not only does it have limitless potential for soundtrack mashups and goes with literally everything, I wish I was exaggerating, but it is also one of the most ingeniously composed boss battle music in this series that goes so damn perfectly with the idea of Quadraxis' qualities as the Ing's ultimate weapon of war that bows and worships it as an accolade being presented in the background of Dark Aether. Mechanized grinding percussion, pounding drums, and robotic noises molded together for slow reactivation while it continuously powers up and goes back down, casting an ominous group of dark vocals expelling their voices in the vicinity like they are more than ready to witness and prepare for what has started to begin. Both sides sharpen in high levels of magnitude for the first phase of mechanical buildup, adding more quantified diversity built with power until it escalates at a larger scale by including the primordial classic Metroid Prime sound font effect, equivalent to the sound of an industrial-based hammer slamming against an anvil as it suddenly crashes through the air in an echoed alarm, forging deeper in mechanical buildup, causing it to summon a third line of vocals expelling in a higher tone. It's an act of praise and valuable worship. All systems have been brought back to life, and then it starts to analyze, search, scan, detect for any unwanted intruders around the area, fully functioning once more, and then everything starts to combine into one, consumes the atmosphere in everlasting darkness, building extra depth to increase the elemental quality of ominous energy, until finally the high-toned vocals emerge forth and invokes the rest to harmonize in glory and admiring worship. Standing tall, spoken in power and glory, greatness has awakened. Hear thy name, and so it shall be remembered. Quadraxis, the Ing's secret weapon of chaos, has been manifested. Combining all three of these factors for the setting speaks with tremendous volume at the sheer intensity Quadraxis gives off while you are engaged with it. But believe me when I say that this is only the front of the blueprints. The backside is where the truest of all details is written. And holy fucking shit, the ingenuity that's built into this fight is insane! As it begins, Quadraxis will constantly rotate its leg components around itself, while performing a minimum of weaponized combat actions to attack you. Missile launchers that home in directly toward your location, turret lasers that sweep across the room in a horizontal arc, triple potent bursts of matter-antimatter energy with auto-seeking capabilities, and creates one to multiple shock waves of electricity spreading across the surface in a large radius, generated through the dark pulsating energy cores located on its feet joints, which can be destroyed via the boost ball to permanently disable the attack. The process of removing these cores, however, will not deal any damage done to Quadraxis. The main primary target that should be focused on to attack is the 4 weak points located on the knees. At first rate for opposition, the structures around these spots appears to be virtually indestructible, since any charge or missile will cause them to bounce off and do nothing, but will only deal damage if the outline around them is flashing blue for a brief moment, indicating vulnerability, therefore turning red upon impact. After it's introduced with a couple of missiles, the outer exterior will blow up, and Quadraxis will take damage. This process will cause the energy cores to re-enable back to per usual statuses and allow more attacks assembled to Quadraxis' arsenal, making it more excessively dangerous. These attacks include a powerful vortex spin that takes a few rounds of ammo or spherical turbo thrusters to break free from its powerful connection, pulling you in like a magnet, and a charged energy blast of matter-antimatter that now locks on and gains the ability to temporarily stun you, and even causes the audio to slightly deafen out because of how strong the blast is. Both do their part in a cycle to immobilize and distract you from laying the line of concentrated focus on the latter astute weak points if the precision is not well timed or if you're not in range of combat trajectory. Since in the middle of this sequence, the undamaged leg components will be mixed up and scattered with the other broken ones each time when Quadraxis finishes its attack cycle. Once you have the timing and precise actions nailed down for rinse and repeat, Quadraxis will start to lose control of its main body and extract its head module to resume terminal operations, leaving behind its damaged body in the center of the arena, while Quadraxis hovers around and unleashes its attacks as per usual protocol. This time, an indestructible barrier will be initiated and encased around its structure for high defense. And this is where the fight starts to get very interesting, because the damaged body of Quadraxis does seem to serve no valid purpose of use anymore. But in actuality, it is still remaining active and connected to the main core unit. Initiate the Echo Visor, obtained back from the second Dark Samus battle, and you will notice a giant transmitter extending on the top, while emitting sound frequencies supplying power to the barrier around the head. Severing the connection brought from the transmitter will leave Quadraxis stunned and reveal 3 receiver antennas protruding out of the head module. Dismantling these receivers will damage Quadraxis and cause it to deploy one of its Dark Quad sentry units sent after you as a slight diversion to reassemble the transmitter on its body and reactivate the barrier once more. What I find the most extremely interesting about this sequence is the fact that you basically need to enter another dimension to actually locate the weak points just for the premise of figuring out how to damage it. That sounds so crazy to believe, but it's essentially the case. Okay, where were we? Oh, yeah, of course. Once all transceivers are removed, the damage done to its connection interferences causes a chain reaction to the head and breaks the glass casing around it. Then it erratically flies around with barely any function to maintain stability and crashes all over against its already damaged body, removes the base armor from the leg components, and in major conveniences, its uncontrollable actions has revealed the magnetic railing devices for the astute climactic finisher. As for the head module, left exposed and officially rendered defenseless at last. And this is where the absolute genius comes into play. Once Quadraxis is wide open for concentrated weapon fire depositions, the unit will be stunned for a much longer duration and start to circle around its damaged body. Pay attention to which direction it's rotating and climb on the magnetic rails with the spider ball ability. Wait for it to approach on the leg component that you're rested on, initiate the boost ball, and launch yourself onto the stunned head module. Cling to its now magnetic surface and deploy a morphball bomb inside the circular indentations located on each hemisphere, igniting in flames and one weak point close to utter demolishment. After deploying the last bomb, Quadraxis will lose all control of flight, slowly descending to the ground, and Samus jumps off, exits out of morphball mode, slows her momentum, and nails a perfect landing, while the head module loses function in the background before exploding into a million pieces. And the mad AI Quadraxis is forevermore shut down. Okay, allow me to go back for emphasis just to see if I got everything from this final sequence. Retro, you have literally shown the genius from this so much that after Quadraxis is stunned, we need to use itself against itself by gaining the upper hand, or leg, to launch ourselves on the head while it's stunned as the epic final blow for a Metroid boss fight. I can hardly believe what I am saying right now. This is unlike anything I have ever experienced before or since I began playing the Metroid series. And to think that it all started from Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, the most innovative and fucking incredible video game sequel I have ever laid my eyes on and grasped its luxury with my hands in awe-filled luxury. The tip of the iceberg for discovering the rest of the bosses in this amazing franchise all turned out to be the bottom of it all. Grapple Guardian, Spider Guardian, Amorbus, Chica, Dark Samus, Emperor Ing, and fucking Quadraxis! All of these bosses were my first impression to the series. But this reinstates every formal characteristic of what makes a boss fight so goddamn enjoyable. Innovation, derivation, creativity, transcendent ingenuity! My excitement levels may be speaking clearly enough as it is, but I have all the more reasons to explain why I fucking love the Quadraxis fight. The lore makes it sound so intense to believe that when you arrive, this monumental machine of war is ways above your league. The design of it all, from the boss itself and the stages from fighting it, is astonishingly unique. This fight takes the term quality over quantity and succeeds with both. The concept of literally and figuratively dissecting it piece by piece, dividing all of its forms into legitimate segments and breaking them down into analyzable data from the scan visor is pure fucking genius. And because of that, since it's a conflict of man against machine, you fighting a highly advanced, rogue colossal-sized tool of war built at insurmountable intervals of artificial intelligence, and requires yourself to be intelligent by unleashing your entire arsenal to show who is the superior model of intelligence. It's thrilling, it's exciting, and it's worth with tremendous value for everything it delivers as a boss in a video game. And it is so rewarding because the matter-antimatter weapon it used to own now bears the mark of your outstanding accomplishment. The Annihilator Beam. Everything about Quadraxis, from design, concept, lore, setting, music, fight, prospect, presentation, and reward is complete. A legendary golden fucking standard badass Metroid boss battle. The Ing stolen masterpiece as the greatest kind in Metroid for the concept of destroying one. Quadraxis, your blueprints are sacred. This has been GBA049. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next mission.